Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narotamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayet Nashupaya shirabhadreshu Nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke Bhaktir bhavati naishtaki Krishnaya vasudevaya Devaki nandanaya cha Nanda gopa kumaraya Govindaya namo namaha Tvam tatanarhasi chamam kripanamanatam Tvaktum vichasva pitaram tva shokataptam Ajastarimam bhavata pragjadustaram yat Tadvantam nayaya karunena yamena duram. Oh, really? Tvam tata harhasi chamam kripanatanatam Tvakvam vichasva pitaram tava shokta taptam Anjastarmenat bhavata pragjadustaram yat Dadvantam na yadanukarena yamena duram Tum tata narhasi chamam kripanananatam Tvaktum vichasva pitaram tava sokta taptam Ajastarmena bhavatar prajaptustaram yad Tadvantam na yananukarena yamena duram Tvam. Oh, sorry. Tvam, you, tata, my dear son, na, not, arhasi, ought, cha, and, mam, me, kripanam, very poor, anatham, without a protector, tvaktum, to give up, vichaksva, look, pitaram, at the father, tava, your, shokataptam, affected by so much lamentation, agja, easily, taramena, we can cross, bhavata, by you, aprajadustararam, very difficult to cross for one without a son, yet, which Davantam, the kingdom of darkness. Nayahi, do not go away. Akarunanena, merciless. Yamena, with Yamaraj. Duram, any further. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Once I finish this text and purport, I'll read about 7 verses ahead, and we'll enter into the next chapter, and then I'll speak, with your permission, Dravida Prabhu and Dharma Setu Prabhu. My dear son, I am helpless and very much aggrieved. You should not give up my company. Just look at your lamenting father. We are helpless because without a son, we shall have to suffer the distress of going to the darkest hellish regions. You are the only hope by which we can get out of these dark regions. Therefore, I request you not to go any further without the merciless Yama. With the merciless Yama. Purport. According to the Vedic injunctions, one must accept a wife just to beget a son, who can deliver one from the clutches of Yamaraj. Unless one has a son to offer oblations to the Pitas, or forefathers, one must suffer in Yamaraj's kingdom. King Chitraketu was very much aggrieved, thinking that because his son was going away with Yamaraj, he himself would again suffer. The subtle laws exist for the karmis. If one becomes a devotee, he has no more obligations to the laws of karma. I'm waiting for Dharma Setu's permission to proceed. Yeah, okay. My dear son, you have slept a long time. Now please get up. Your playmates are calling you to play. Since you must be very hungry, please get up and suck my breast and dissipate our lamentation. Text 58. My dear son, I am certainly most unfortunate, for I can no longer see your mild smiling. You have closed your eyes forever. I therefore conclude that you have been taken from this planet to another, from which you will not return. My dear son, I can no longer hear your pleasing voice. Text 59. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, accompanied by his wife, who was thus lamenting for her dead son. King Chitraketu began crying loudly, with an open mouth, being greatly aggrieved. Text 60. As the king and queen lamented, all their male and female followers joined them in crying. Because of the sudden accident, all the citizens of the kingdom were almost unconscious. Text 61. When the great sage Angira understood that the king was almost dead in an ocean of lamentation, he went there with Narada Rishi. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Chitraketu's Lamentation. Chapter 15. Should I read the chapter summary? Okay. In this chapter, Angira Rishi... Oh, the saints Narada and Angira instruct King Chitraketu. In this chapter, Angira Rishi, along with Narada, consoles Chitraketu as far as possible. Angira and Narada Rishi came to relieve the king from excessive lamentation by instructing him about the spiritual significance of life. The great sages Angira and Narada explain that the relationship between father and son is not factual. It is simply a representation of the illusory energy. The relationship did not exist before, nor will it stay in the future. By the arrangement of time, the relationship exists only in the present. One should not lament for temporary relationships. The entire cosmic manifestation is temporary, although not unreal. It is not factual. By the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything created in the material world is transient. By a temporary arrangement, a father begates a child, or a living entity becomes the child of a so-called father. This temporary arrangement is made by the Supreme Lord. Neither the father nor the son exist independently. As the king listened to the great sages, he was relieved from his false lamentation, and then he inquired about their identity. The great sages presented who they were, and instructed that all sufferings are due to the bodily conception of life. When one understands the spiritual identity and surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Person, one becomes actually happy. When one searches for happiness in matter, one must certainly lament for bodily relationships. Self-realization means spiritual realization of one's relationship with Krishna. Such realization ends one's miserable material life. Text 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, while King Chitraketu, overcome by lamentation, lay like a dead body at the side of the dead body of his son, the two great sages, Narada and Angira, instructed him about spiritual consciousness as follows. Text 2. I'll read the Sanskrit. Koyam syat tava rajendra. Oh, sorry. Text 3 is where I'll go. Text 2. O king, what relationship does the dead body for which you lament? No, it is text 2. Sorry. Koyam syat tava rajendra bhavan yam anusochyati tvam chasya kamtama shristo pure danim ataparam. Translation. O king, what relationship does the dead body for which you lament have with you, and what relationship do you have with it? You may say that you are now related as father and son, but do you think this relationship existed before? Does it truly exist now? Will it continue in the future? Purport. The instructions given by Narada and Angira Muni are the true spiritual instructions for the illusion-conditioned soul. This world is temporary, but because of our previous karma, we have come here in accepted bodies, creating temporary relationships in terms of society, friendship, love, nationality, and community, which are all finished at death. These temporary relationships did not exist in the past, nor will they exist in the future. Therefore, at the present moment, the so-called relationships are illusions. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakoya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swamparantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschyachareshatarine Namo Mahavanandaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Goratvase Namaha Vansha Kalpatarum Visya Kripa Sindhur Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Durga me pate menantasya sakalat paragater mahur swakripa yasti danena santa santpavalambanam. When I read this purport, I thought of when I was reading this section, I was thinking of this verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says, Urdvamalam adashaktam ashvatam prapura avayam Chidasmi yasya parami yastam veda savedavit. Which means that everything that we see within this world, all the conceptions of life that we have within this world, there's substance to it within the spiritual world. And the example that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita is a tree reflected on water. So the reflection within the water has form, it has meaning, it seems to have substance, but if you see a mango hanging in that reflection and you try to grab that mango, you simply get wet. But if you look up at the reflection and you see the substance, you can grab the mango and actually taste the mango. So in the same world, in the same way, the desire for relationships, family, community, all of this has its origin in the realm of transcendence. And the only difference between the two is the quality and the intentions of the relationship. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami gives a definition of the difference between love and lust. Kama indriya prite icha tare palikam, Krishna indriya prite vacha tare premanam. That kama is that which is propelled by a sense of wanting to enjoy for oneself, whereas love is endowed with a feeling of, I want to please Krishna. I want to please Krishna. I don't want to just please myself. So that's the difference between the relationships that we see in the spiritual world and the relationships that we have in this world. And we see at the beginning of this particular pastime, Chitraketu doesn't want a son for the purpose of having a relationship. Chitraketu wants to have a son for the purpose of maintaining his dynasty. It's basically a desire for Labha, Puja, and Pratishta. That one has a desire to be worshipped, one has a desire for recognition, and these are the things which propel us in the relationships within this world. That's why these particular qualities are so frowned upon within the practice of sadhana bhakti, because they provide an intention which won't actually satisfy the heart of the living entity or of Krishna. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, at its very onset, it informs us of the purpose of how to become refined in that intention, in that consciousness of service, or the lack thereof. So it says, Vedyam vasam atra vascha sivedam tapashrayum mulanam. The purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam is to distinguish reality from illusion, so we can develop a sense of where does our actual wealth lie? Where is our actual need lie? What is the thing that's actually going to fully satisfy us? And the ultimate fruit of the Srimad Bhagavatam is ultimately Krishna Prema. So we have a duty to seriously consider what is the difference between what is real relationships and what is illusory relationships. And by considering this very, very sincerely and very consistently over a long period of time, this gradually attaches the mind to Krishna. This is explained by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Many people in this world, when you read this particular section of Chitraketu, they feel, this is such a hard-hearted philosophy. Why do you guys believe in this? And they may even want to, shy away from discussing such a topic. But Kaviraj Goswami doesn't recommend that we take that path. He says, Siddhanta bole chitte nakara lash, iha hoite Krishna lage sudrit manash. That by discussing these topics and not considering them controversial, one's mind gradually becomes attached to Krishna. So we actually have a duty to be able to clearly distinguish for ourselves and simultaneously be able to sincerely teach others. So that was kind of what the basis of what I was going to speak about is, what is that illusion on an individual level, and simultaneously what is our duty as a preacher, which is coming from the example of Angira Muni and Narada Muni, in terms of cutting away that illusion for others. And by not taking up the sword of knowledge and really, attacking these anarthas through becoming trained in Siddhanta, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta explains in his Prakrita Rasa Shatadushani that Siddhanta Ulashan Anarthan Acharan, that by maintaining, by being lazy in the study of Siddhanta, by not taking the subject seriously, one's heart will become overwhelmed by anarthas. And that's what we see in Chitraketu. Chitraketu was overwhelmed by the material illusion of family attachment. And this is something which will stop practically anyone's spiritual progress, because it requires a lot of time and energy in order to organize. And if you don't have an axiom by which you can harmonize all the relationships within that particular institution, then it's easy for things to just kind of run amok and become lost in an endless network of responsibilities and entanglements. So this whole attachment, this whole material illusion is all due to a forgetfulness of Krishna. That's Chitraketu's main problem, is that he's forgetful of Krishna and he's overwhelmed with a material desire which is not actually going to fulfill his real need. His real need is remembrance of Krishna. And forgetting Krishna is the cause of his suffering. And that's the cause of everyone's suffering in this world. Krishna boliya chitte, Krishna boliya jeev, anahir bahir mukh, atayeva maya tare samsaratuk. The cause of everyone's suffering within this world. And really the root of all of our problems in life is that we don't have attachment for Krishna's name, we don't have attachment for Vaishnav Seva, and we don't have attachment for Krishna Katha. And due to that lack of attachment, we become cast into an ocean of Bahu Shaka Hridantascha, Buddhayo Vayasahinam, an endless network of opportunities, commutations, and permutations by which we can engage our energy, engage our time, engage our devotion in such a way that we will ultimately become more dissatisfied with our circumstances. Otherwise, we really don't have any problem in reality, because our nature is the same as Krishna's. Our nature is to be Sat Chit Ananda. And our problem is that we drift away from that reality. We drift away from that absorption, and we fix our absorption in material illusion. So the nature of the living entity is it has to be absorbed in something. If you're not absorbed in Krishna, Krishna bahumukha bolgavanshakare nikatastana mayatare japadiyadare. That when you turn away from being absorbed in Krishna, then Maya is there to trap you in an unlimited number of ways that you can become distracted. And that's really the worst type of suffering. Distraction just means Krishna means all attractive, so if our consciousness is attracted to Krishna, there's no question of distraction. But if we're turning away from Krishna, distraction is the root of all suffering. Distraction from Krishna is the root of all of our suffering. So this illusion begins with contemplation. We think that maybe there's something in it for me. Dayato visayam pumsam, kama tesu bajayate, sangat sanjayate kaman, kama kroda bijayate. That by contemplating the objects of the senses, by contemplating a lifestyle separate from Krishna, we develop an identity with it, actually. We develop a sense of purpose, a sense of self. The objects which we try to exploit within this world become the things which actually define us. Purusha prakritisto hi bhongte prakritir jangunan, karanam gurasango syat sarasad yoni janmasu. And when we're overcome by that material contemplation, we fall victim to Hridaya Durlabham. So in that same 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada at the very end of it explains that the first 5 verses are dealing with the Hridaya Durlabham, the weakness of heart, our inordinate attraction for the material energy. And how one can overcome it is also mentioned. Srila Prabhupada doesn't really go into excruciating detail, but if you apply your intelligence with references to other places in Shastra, one can begin to understand it. So he says, Krishna says, Asanga Shastrena Driyena Chitva, that this material illusion has to be cut with a sword of knowledge. And that's what Chitraketu is coming and doing. Tato du sanga usrija, sante su sajeta bhutiman. Santa eva sichindanti manovya sangam uktibihi. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that we should give up all bad of association, and with sharp intelligence we should enter into the association of sadhus. And in that association they can speak words which are cutting. Santa eva sichindanti. And that cut will cut through our manos vyasangam uktibihi. The Manovyasangam is this material contemplation, this Hridaya Durlabham. We're cut from that attachment because the sadhus give us a higher taste. They make us doubt our entanglement within the Ashapashas Tatarbandha, the endless network of material hope. And they drowned us in an ocean of Krishna's pastimes. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse which appears that says, Anugrahaya Bhaktamam Manusam Deham Ashata Bhajate Tadrasi Krida Yat Shrutva Tat Parovavet. That Krishna comes to this world and displays his pastimes as Krishna, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not just for the sake of it. In one sense it's for the sake of it, but simultaneously it's for the sake of attracting the conditioned souls. And Krishna displays so many pastimes that everyone's heart can become attracted to these pastimes if they're even just given an opportunity to just hear the pastime for a moment. They're drowned. They become so captivated by that pastime. And even if they don't become captivated in that very moment, there's so much benefit just for them to be hearing about Krishna and his pastimes. So recently on book distribution, we have found a new technique for distributing books to Chinese people. And if anyone who's distributed books before knows that they're some of our hardest customers, have been for a while. One devotee was telling me that that particular part of the world is overcome by Rahu. So apparently there's a particular astrological influence that makes it difficult for them. But I think it's that planet shifting because we found a technique that has 90% success. So one thing is that you have to be very careful and not startle them. So you have to be very gentle when you call them over. And then when you call them over, you say, do you like mysterious things? And they say, yeah, I do. And then what I do is I just open up Krishna book and I just start going through Krishna's pastimes. And I just start explaining the different pastimes in Krishna book. And as soon as they go, oh, then I say, and I close the book and I say, people just take a book and give a donation. And they pull out their wallet and they give money. So, anugrahaya bhaktana manusyam dehamashita bhajati tadrasi krita yat shrudva tat prabhovavet. That by hearing these pastimes, we develop an attraction for that spiritual world. And actually, not only do we develop an attraction for that spiritual world, but we develop a desire to want to enter into those pastimes. So, as followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how do we enter into those pastimes? Well, it's explained that actually anyone who's participating in the Krishna consciousness movement now, Adyapi Kari Lila Kare Goraroy, Kona Kona Bhagya Bani Deki Parapoy. That the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they just didn't stop in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. They didn't stop in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They didn't stop in the Chaitanya Mangala. The pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are taking place right now. And only those who are fortunate are able to perceive them. So how do we actually enter into the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? How do we become absorbed in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and actually participate in those pastimes? So there's a section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in which there's different ways in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shows mercy to his devotees. And one of the ways he shows mercy to the devotees is through a Vesh, a Shakshi Vesh, in which he empowers the devotee to be able to spread Krishna consciousness. So the way we enter into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes is we have to pray for an opportunity to be of service to one of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates are constantly absorbed in Bhajo Krishna, Bolo Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha. They're constantly absorbed in worshipping Krishna, in preaching about Krishna, and in chanting Krishna's holy names. This is the very definition of a Gaura Priyajana. Someone who's a Gaura Priyajana is a very dear associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in a paper written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he explains that it's called Sri Chaitanya and his associates. He explains that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an extended subjects. And it's not just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that fits within the tattva of who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. This is specifically mentioned in the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Isham Ishvara Tarakam Tat Prakasha Tat Shaktir Krishna Chaitanya Sanjakam. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is existing through various mediums of energy. He's the Shaktiman and he has various Shaktis which facilitate his purpose in different ways. And one of those Shaktis is the Gurun, the Guru, or the Gurus. That one who can take shelter of a Gaura Priyajana, one who is very dear to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and has become dear due to having been engaged in the preaching activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for a long period of time under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master before him. One who takes shelter of such a spiritual master, they actually become qualified to begin to enter into those pastimes. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati goes on to explain that the spiritual master appears according to the spiritual receptivity of the disciple, which means that according to the sincerity of the disciple, according to the intention of the disciple, one receives a spiritual master which can facilitate the desire of the disciple. So it's not that just because we've come into the institution of ISKCON, or just because we're serving in the temple, that we'll necessarily get a bona fide spiritual master. It's something that's happening on an internal level. The institution can provide facility, the institution can provide association, but ultimately it comes down to what is our intention in service. So it's important that we try to fix ourselves in a conception of being an antarmukh jana. That I am an internally situated person. An internally situated person means that my desire is in alignment with the desires of the previous acharyas. And the desires of the previous acharyas is stated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Kriti sadya bhavat sadya bhavasa sananabhita nityasiddhasya bhavasya prakritam hridya sadyata. That the purpose of sadhana, the purpose of sadhana bhakti is the attainment of bhava. So if one has a desire for developing love for Krishna, then Krishna will reciprocate with a spiritual master who can give that love for Krishna. And they are empowered to do so on the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pritivichi, what's the other verse? Guru Tara Hana Edesh. What's the first line? Yada deka tahe kaha Krishna upadesh amara agnaya guru tana edesh. That person has been empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give Krishna prema on behalf of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on behalf of the Panchatattva. But if one has a external consideration, they're a bahir mukjana. Their conception of life is based on an external desire, like Chitraketu. We see that when Chitraketu approached Angira Muni originally, he was a bahir mukjana. And Angira Rishi reciprocated with that desire by fulfilling his desire. So if one just wants, their emotional sentiments to be flattered, if one wants a spiritual master who's very handsome or who's very good with children, or sometimes he takes pictures with me and speaks so many nice words, Krishna will fulfill that desire. But that won't actually fulfill the longing of the soul. Savai pum samparo dharmo yatar bhaktir dhoksaje hoitikiya pratiyata yeyatmam supersedity. It won't provide that supersedity. Because that spiritual master, even if they're bona fide, Because of the receptivity capacity of the disciple, that spiritual master will not bestow pure devotional service on the disciple. They'll deal with the disciple the way the disciple is choosing to be dealt with. But as soon as one develops a humble disposition, trinadapi sanuchena, tarorapi sahishtuna, manina manadena, kirtaniya sadahari, in becoming humble is where Chitraketu has come to. He's seeing the reality of the material existence. He's seeing, as Srila Prabhupada says in his Vrindavan Bhajanam, I'm seeing the naked face of the material energy, and I simply sit in Vrindavan and I laugh. So when the naked face of the material energy is revealed to the jiva, then one is able to begin to inquire, atato brahma jignasyat. And from that inquiry, if one cultivates the right attitude, tadvidi pranipratena praniprashnena sevaya, upadaksyanti te jnanams, jnaninas tatvadarshinaha. This particular quality that needs to be there in order to receive the true gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the true gift of the Gaurapriya Janas, which gives us the qualification to enter into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. This particular quality is pranipat. One has to become submissive. I've noticed, I haven't been around for a very long time, but I can say that in the time that I have been around, I've seen many people come into the association of devotees, and I've seen many people leave the association of devotees. Many people come to the association of the devotees on the basis of lokika shraddha. They come to the association of devotees on the basis of, this seems like a nice thing to do. But because they don't become submissive to the message which they hear in Bhagavatam class, to the message which they read in the books of Srila Prabhupada, because they never really submit and surrender to that message within the heart, then they never develop Shastriya Shraddha. And because they don't develop Shastriya Shraddha, it's very difficult for them to become fixed in devotion. And so then what happens is Krishna Bahirmukha, Bhogavansha Kare. They turn their way from Krishna, and they think, maybe I can find some enjoyment. And they're cast into that ocean of Asha Pasha Sastarabandha, an endless network of hope, once again. So it's important for us as devotees to be able to see where someone is at according to their qualification to receive the right message, just like Angira Rishi. He was able to gauge where was Chitraketu, what could he get. It's just like when my Guru Maharaj gives this example of when you're taking a shower, you have to adjust the knob. We have that one lever in the shower up there. And if you put it on too hot, it burns you. If you put it on too cold, you might get pneumonia if it's the wrong time of year. But if you can set it just right, you can take a proper shower. So in the same way, preaching is like that. We have to see where is the living entity in their spiritual development. And simultaneously, we have to be willing to be patient with their progress in the process of devotional service. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met the Ramnan Brahmana in South India. He was chanting the names of Ram, and he was very attached to chanting the names of Ram. But in due course of time, after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, ever since I've met you, I can't stop chanting the names of Krishna. So in due course of time, in his gradual development, he started chanting the names of Krishna. Same thing with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't immediately begin to cut into him. Rather, he was patient with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to see that, okay, what does he need? He has a little bit of scholarly pride, so let me flatter that pride for a little bit, and let's see where it goes. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 7 days, and he said, my dear young man, I've been speaking for 7 days non-stop, and you haven't asked any questions. And he said, did you understand anything? He said, no, I understand Vedanta Sutra, but the way you've explained it, it flusters my mind. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a bit inquisitive, like, oh, what's going on here? And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to give him Krishna consciousness, so much so that he changed Mukti Pade to Bhakti Pade. So if we can become patient in our mood of preaching while simultaneously not compromising the message of Krishna consciousness, then in due course of time we can actually purify the entire world through the preaching of Krishna consciousness. Pranayachayar sehet prachar. So we have to have life to preach, and having life means being connected with the disciplic succession and representing that message in a straightforward, honest and patient way. Hare Krishna. So it's 8:36. What time are we supposed to stop, Dravida Prabhu?
Between now and 1:15.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we can open it up for discussion and questions.
Many, many verses. I don't remember you quoting so many verses. Bhaktya, how's that one going? Anugrahaya.
Anugrahaya Bhaktanam.
I don't know if it was clear that that's spoken by Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the mercy of the devotees, he comes and in his human form, original human form, and enacts the Leela, which, hearing them, you'll become attracted. In other words, he's providing us subject for the kata. That's a very interesting verse. So I just wanted to make sure the devotees understood that's Krishna himself speaking. I'm doing it, this is part of my mission when I come here, to provide all of these leela, which will then be written and spoken about, and then you'll be able to become absorbed. Thank you.
Balaram Prabhu.
Who came up with this this strategy for
the Chinese? Oh, yeah. It was a combination of conversations that I've had with Gauranga Prema Prabhu.
Oh, okay.
And
is he good at distributing to them?
No.
Oh, he's not.
But basically, there's a whole
Gauranga Prema's from China.
Yeah, so there's a whole backstory. A few years ago, during the morning program, just like we read something here, in LA we also read something. So Savas Prabhu was reading this section from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tour through South India. And there's a temple in South India where these two birds come every day, the Shiva temple, and they take this prasadam from Lord Shiva and then they go. And they've been doing this for thousands of years at the same time. So Savas Prabhu was reading this, and Gauranga Prema, as soon as he started to hear it, his eye, he shot up. And then after, he went over and he was looking at it. So I went up and I asked him, I said, what's going on? He said, well, you see, the Chinese people are very attracted to these types of things. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, Chinese people really like mysterious things. I said, oh, okay. So I just somehow, Ganganath Prabhu, he distributed a book to a Chinese girl at the Washington State University, and he said, I realize you have to be very careful with Chinese because they can become scared very easily. You have to be very, very gentle, actually, because they can become startled quite easily. Their culture is very controlled and conservative, so too much like enthusiasm or exuberance is like very unnatural for them. It's like a bomb going off almost. So basically, you just have to be very, very careful and just say, excuse me, just 1 minute. And they'll come over, and then, so I started doing that, and then I just, somehow, Krishna just gave me the intelligence to remember Gauranga Prema, this instruction he gave me, and then I just started saying that, well, these books talk about so many mysterious things, and so I go through and I explain, I show the picture of the Ocean King, and Varuna, I say, this is about Krishna meeting the Ocean King, and then this is Krishna swallowing the forest fire, and then I have a picture of Akura discovering, the footprints, and I say, this is Akura discovering so many mysterious things on the ground. And at some point in the course of going through all these pastimes, sometimes I go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long it takes, at some point, 90% of the time they'll go, oh, or they'll laugh. And then as soon as they do that, they take the books. Yeah, just Krishna book. For some reason, literally, they were our best customer on this last traveling Sankirtan trip. We had a 90% success rate with Chinese people.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're at least, like, religiously speaking, they don't have, like I was just listening to a lecture by Tamal Krishna Goswami, and he was saying an interesting thing about the youth of China. He was saying that, he said, I noticed they were the best best customers for Krishna consciousness, and he said specifically the youth, and he said that they're trained not to mingle with boy and girl stuff, He said they're not really into intoxication and gambling, youth. And he was talking about meat eating, since many of them are poor, practically, they're on rice and vegetables and stuff. But one thing he said was that they don't really have a background of religion. And he said, therefore, we don't have much competition. But yeah, like religiously speaking, they tend to be atheistic, and also, or just not personal. So it's interesting that they're taking interest in these quite personal, you could say, pastimes of Krishna.
And also, Chinese culture has a lot of mysterious things in it, like dragons and emperors and all these things.
Yeah, that's true. Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna Goswami, I think it was there in 1977, he said, because he was thinking about going to China, and Prabhupada said, don't go to China, I want to train you. And he said, the Chinese people, they'll be ready in 40 years.
Okay, so it's around that time.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Great. Anyone else? Dharma Setu, Prabhu?
Yeah, I'll say something.
Wow. The risky business.
Well, you brought up the point about one has to be ready to hear. And you're dealing with a very, very sensitive situation here. Have you ever been in a situation where you have to preach to parents who are losing their child, young child? It's what to say and how much can they actually hear, and even if they hear so many things, what can they actually accept, because it is such a devastating, and that's the proof of Angira and Narada's purity. And also there must be something there in Chittaketu's heart. They could sense that he was ready to hear, because most times they're not.
Yeah.
They're not at all ready to hear anything, any philosophy. It's just too devastating. So
it's amazing, actually, throughout our Shastra, how sensitive Narada Muni is in practically all circumstances. He knows exactly what needs to be said, when it needs to be said. And even like in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, in the journey of Gopakumar, Narada Muni doesn't immediately tell Gopakumar about Goloka Vrindavan. He's in Vaikuntha, and he says, hey, there's another place that's better than this. And he goes, oh, really? How's there something? Shh. Don't speak so loud. He said, no, there's a place that's higher. It's called Ayodhya. So Gopakumar goes to Ayodhya, and then he goes to Dwarka. And when he's in Dwarka, Narada Muni says, okay, now I'm going to tell you about the topmost place in front of Uddhava. And he can mention it because Uddhava's seen Vrindavan. So I don't know if it's like an atmosphere thing that, he can't just speak it in any place, but because he's in the association at Uddhava, he knew he could speak it there. So then he spoke about Goloka Vrindavan to Gopakumar, and he said, but you can't attain Goloka Vrindavan being here in Dwarka. You have to go to Jagannath Puri. So there's a sensitivity that Narada Muni has where he's gradually cultivating Gopakumar in due course of time, and then he kind of finally gives him this final instruction. Hare Krishna. The final instruction is perform Nam Sankirtan, and in Goloka Vrindavan, and you'll attain Goloka Vrindavan, is my understanding. Is that right, Dravida Prabhu? Okay. It's 8:44, so I think we'll wrap up, right? Okay, thank you all. Vancha kalpatrumbhascha kripa sindhudeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Antikoti Vaishnava Vrindaki.